Let's jump right into this explainer because we're looking at how scientists are totally rethinking the way we make glass. Now, you and I interact with glass surfaces literally every single day, right? From checking our phones first thing in the morning to looking out our windows or taking pictures with our camera lenses. But glass has this one fundamental, super annoying flaw. It reflects light. Well, today we're diving into a groundbreaking new approach that borrows a genius idea directly from nature to solve this everyday problem. We've all been there, dealing with that blinding glare on our screens. You're outside, it's a gorgeous sunny day, you just want to read a quick text or check a map, and all you get is a perfect reflection of the sky or your own forehead. It is a massive headache for tech engineers. But what if I told you that nature actually solved this exact issue millions of years ago, using nothing but the slow, steady power of biological evolution? So, let's start with Section 1, Nature's Invisible Solution. To tackle this pesky glare issue, scientists decided to take a biomimetic approach. That basically means they designed artificial materials inspired by biology. They started looking really closely at bugs, specifically the wings of the glasswing butterfly and certain species of cicada. See, these delicate little insects have this amazing superpower where they can turn their wings practically invisible to hide from predators. When light hits their wings, it doesn't bounce off. It just passes right on through. So how are they pulling this off? Well, it's actually not some fancy chemical trick. It all comes down to physical structure. Their wings have this highly specific, kind of pseudo-random arrangement of tiny, tiny structures. We're talking sub-wavelength nanopillars that are less than 100 nanometers wide, spaced roughly 150 to 250 nanometers apart. Because these little pillars are actually smaller than the wavelength of visible light itself, they end up trapping and guiding the light through the wing, instead of bouncing it back into the eyes of a hungry bird. Which brings us to Section 2, the engineering challenge. The million-dollar question was, how do we replicate that microscopic insect architecture on our own artificial glass? Now, typically, making glass anti-reflective means slapping on chemical coatings. And honestly, that's a messy process. It takes multiple steps, creates hazardous toxic waste, and eventually the coating just degrades and scratches off over time anyway. So the holy grail these researchers were chasing was a single-step, low-cost, completely chemical-free laser method, a way to etch those anti-reflective properties right into the glass itself, so it lasts. But, there's always a catch. The big roadblock here is something in physics called the optical diffraction limit. Basically, standard laser fabrication is great, but its resolution is limited by the laser's own wavelength. That means it can really only carve things reliably at the microscale. But to mimic our sneaky little glasswing butterfly, we have to carve glass way, way smaller, down at the nanoscale. We literally need to make structures smaller than 100 nanometers. All right, Section 3, sculpting glass with lasers. To bypass that tricky optical diffraction limit, the research team broke out femtosecond lasers. Now, these are ultra-short laser pulses that last for less than 1 picosecond. To put that into perspective for you, a picosecond is 1/1,000,000th of a second. It's incredibly fast. By blasting standard fused silica glass with these lightning-fast, circularly polarized laser pulses, they found this perfect sweet spot of energy that allows for precision structuring way beyond the usual diffraction limits. And the way it works is just fascinating. By carefully dialing in the laser's energy density, also known as its fluence, and controlling the exact number of pulses, the glass actually starts to self-organize. It doesn't just melt into a sloppy puddle. Instead, it forms these very distinct, uniform little nanospikes. The researchers realized that by hitting the glass with anywhere from 6 to 50 pulses, they could build up these spikes perfectly while completely avoiding blasting destructive craters into the material. And when you actually compare the biological nanopillars of a real cicada wing side by side with this new laser-treated glass, the resemblance is just uncanny. The artificial glass mimics those natural structures almost perfectly. The artificial spikes they created average about 224 nanometers in height, and they capture that exact spatial randomness and pillar-like shape of the insect wing. Moving right along to Section 4, testing the nanospikes. So it looks like a bug wing, but does it perform like one in the real world? First, the team ran some heavy-duty numerical simulations. When they looked at the simulation data for how light intensity is distributed, it clearly showed that the random heights of these artificial nanospikes create a smooth transition in the refractive index. In plain English, instead of acting like a hard wall that bounces light right back at you, the textured surface acts kind of like a sponge. It grabs the light and just pulls it directly into the bulk of the glass. Then came the actual, real-world optical testing, and the results were absolutely staggering. They processed both sides of the glass plate, because, of course, a butterfly wing has texture on both the top and the bottom, and this treated glass ended up with a reflectivity of less than 1% for low angles of incidence. It literally cut down the reflection by almost an entire order of magnitude compared to standard untreated glass. But hey, stopping reflection is completely useless if you can't actually see through the glass, right? Well, the omnidirectional transparency stayed remarkably high. This double-sided process material maintained a transmission rate of higher than 85% across all sorts of wavelengths in the visible and near-infrared spectrums. So the glass doesn't just stop glare, it stays beautifully, functionally clear. And finally, Section 5, a clearer, glare-free future. So what's the so what here? Why does all this incredible physics actually matter to us? Well, this isn't just a fun little trick for the lab. The researchers pointed out that this tech can easily be scaled up using industrial lasers that are already commercially available today. By just scanning the laser back and forth, they can texture massive areas of glass. That means our future could be filled with totally glare-free smartphone screens. We're talking highly efficient solar panels that actually harvest sunlight instead of bouncing it away. We're talking perfectly clear camera lenses and super-sensitive photodetectors. The researchers are incredibly optimistic, emphasizing that this single-step, durable nanostructuring method is basically poised to completely revolutionize the way we manufacture transparent surfaces. Because the anti-reflective magic is carved physically into the glass itself, rather than just painted on as a fragile, toxic chemical layer, it's going to last exactly as long as the glass does. It really just makes you stop and wonder, doesn't it? If we can solve the daily multi-billion-dollar engineering headache of screen glare just by looking a little closer at the wings of a butterfly and a cicada, what other massive technological breakthroughs are just waiting to be discovered in the natural world? The answers are probably flying, swimming, or growing right outside our windows right now, just waiting for us to finally pay attention.